Mr. Gorbachev, tear down these invisible walls. Today on... So today on Press B to Cancel, we are talking about open world games. Quick definer, because we have been trying to define this a little bit, and it seems like we all have different definitions of this, and I'm sure we'll come back to it. But online, the definition I came across was that open world games are games that don't prevent the player from wandering the entirety of the world with invisible walls or other forms of walls. Pretty simple. I am joined today by Sick Jake.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here again.
Sinistar77.
Hello. I'm glad to have a second episode now, almost under my belt.
And the always charming Chardmonk.
You flatter me, sir. You flatter me.
Y'all ready to talk about this?
Y'all ready for this?
Okay, so
copyright strikes.
I got a little question for you guys. How old do you think the oldest open world game is?
Okay.
Give me a year.
Okay. I was thinking about this. I'm going to go... if I remember when this came out, I'm going to say either 79 or 80.
God damn it.
Okay.
I was going to go with like 80, 81, somewhere around there.
When was Rogue? When did Rogue come out?
It's a good question.
I'm not sure.
That like late
But I guarantee
early 80s?
you
Yeah.
it was not 1970.
It's earlier?
Yes. So the first open world
really?
game is an electromechanical game from Sega called oh my goodness, I just had it. Skyrocket, I believe it was. Jet Rocket.
Afternoon Delight.
Jet Rocket is what it's called.
And that's
It's an
open world.
electromechanical arcade game where it's basically you can freely explore this interstellar space. It's kind of wild how it works, and it's kind of hard to find good visuals of how the game works online. But yes, you can free roam through space in this game from
Okay.
1970.
What year again?
1970.
1970.
So this is no screen. This is all physical parts.
It's
Electrical game, basically.
physical parts, and I think a projector of sorts.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah, my guess, to tell you why I went like 79 or 80, is the Ultima games, and maybe even Aklabeth, although I think Aklabeth was all just dungeon. But the Ultima games from day one always had explorable world.
Yeah. I specifically remember in Ultima, I don't know which one it was, but we killed the king right off the bat. Because
Lord British. You killed Lord British.
Maybe. I don't know. We started in a throne room and I attacked the king and he killed him. And I went, what the hell did we just do? And then I don't think I ever played it after that. Also, Rogue came out, it looks like, in 1980. Jake,
Okay.
just so you know.
Is Rogue an open world game, though? I wasn't sure. It's level by level, but I mean, it's infinite possibilities.
It says that it's a dungeon crawler video game.
Okay, so
But
maybe
that
that
doesn't
count.
necessarily mean it's not open world. It just means that's probably the play style of it. So
I guess that's kind of one of the questions, right? Is where do we draw the line between linear and open world, right? Because is a dungeon crawler necessarily linear, right?
Well,
that's fair. Go ahead,
here's
Wolf.
a good example. Spiderman for the PS4. Very, very easy to understand that is an open world game. You can swing around all throughout the city almost immediately without issue. Nothing will stop you. You can go take on all sorts of side missions and side quests all over the place. However, more stuff does get unlocked as you progress through the story. So the story is a requirement to get further into the game, but you can access the entirety of the world from the get-go.
But I mean, we could also argue the same thing about GTA, or at least GTA 3. I can't stay for the top-down versions, but I can talk about the 3D, the newer versions. So they do the same thing. But even the islands are locked.
Right. The 3 doesn't give you
story lives.
Access to everything. Same with what's it called? Vice City. Vice City locks off the bridges early on, I believe.
I don't even think San Andreas. Well, San Andreas might be the only one that allowed you to travel between worlds without having to unlock them.
That didn't lock it either. I thought it did.
It might. I mean, I know that was their thing. That's how you could progress the story, is by unlocking it. So it's very possible that was, because all the missions lead you to the new areas, right? So you start out San Andreas, you start on the Los Angeles area, and then you're working, and then somehow you manage to get up to the San Francisco-esque type area, and then they send you over to the Vegas type area. But each mission leads you into that world. But you can still, my idea, now this is purely my idea of an open world versus linear, is open world allows me to do nothing for hours and be entertained by it. It's true. I know it's funny, but it's true. When I play Red Dead Redemption, when I play Witcher, when I play any of the Grand Theft Autos games, I can literally just go do whatever the heck I want for as long as I want and get nowhere in the game, but still put 5 hours in to not progress anywhere. But I'm entertained by it. You know what I mean? So I can do whatever I'd like for the most part.
So in my, kind of research and thinking about this, I actually thought about Red Dead Redemption 2. Because it is open world. I will absolutely agree. You can go and do, whatever the fuck you want for, however long you want. But if I'm remembering correctly, Red Dead Redemption 2, when you pick missions, you get locked into the mission. And that's kind of the way that they progress. Because a lot of open world games, you lose some of that story narrative, right? Where a linear game is story narrative, almost, it's a playable movie, right? You're playing a movie. And so a lot of the kind of the research I looked into and thinking about it on my own is, how do open world games progress a storyline? And a lot of them fail, in my opinion. A lot of them fail to give you kind of that epic feeling, that epic storyline. But Red Dead Redemption 2, via, okay, I've accepted this mission and now I'm locked in, and I either, succeed or fail, and it gives me actual story to the game. So I think that they tried to balance both worlds, right?
I think Red Dead is a great example of an open world game that allows you to progress through the story. My idea, and I'm sorry, we're kind of overtaking it here, but my idea for like a truly open world game, and we talked about it a little bit today, is No Man's Sky. For all those who don't know what No Man's Sky is basically a third person building space adventure game. I knew not a whole lot going into it other than the stories of how terrible it was and how when it first came out, it totally bombed, blah, blah, blah. But they've done a real good job on repairing and fixing it up. And your job is to basically explore space. There's nothing in the way of you doing anything. Now, here's where I get a little wound up on certain stuff, considering linear versus open, is people need boundaries. People need goals. People need an idea to go. I'm a very goal-oriented person in real life. You can ask my wife and you can ask my coworkers like that. I have to have something to aim for to know that I'm being successful at whatever it is I'm doing. So if someone just throws me into a world and says, here you go, have fun. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to have fun? Like what is fun? I could dig a hole. Am I being successful? I dug a hole. Do I put something in said hole? I don't freaking know. It told me to have fun. No, I don't want to do that. And then my brain starts getting overwhelmed. And I'm like, there's too much to do. I have too many options. I need something to tell me where to go. And as much as I absolutely love No Man's Sky, it's a great game, I need direction. What do you got, Sid?
So you brought up two top. Oh, go ahead.
Just I would say there is a goal in No Man's Sky. It's limited, but there are 2 story chains in No Man's Sky. And the old one, when it first came out, you're doing the Atlas path, and you're slowly building up technology and exploring the universe, and it kind of forces you in a direction to the center of the galaxy. That's the story. That's the motivation. If you want to do that, you can completely ignore the story and just survive. And then that's your goal in No Man's Sky, is just to survive.
That's good, because that's all I was doing.
Pretty much, right? But there is a story, and I did go all the way through to the end, and it was a bit of a mind fuck, but it was, oops, no swearing. But it was good. I did like it, but it's definitely open world for sure. Go ahead.
Dropped an F-bomb. I realized it as I was saying as well. Okay, so you brought up two topics that are on my bullet points. So, and really quick, I'm gonna throw them both out, and then we can discuss or just move on or whatever. But a lot of comparisons of open world versus linear were, do open world games release with more bugs or less complete content?
That's fair.
So you kind of brought that up, and then the other one that you brought up was now I've forgotten. Anyways, but I mean, we could talk about more bugs. Do they release with more bugs? I mean, great example is Cyberpunk 2077, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Or No Man's Sky, which released with like 80% of its content missing, right?
Right. But then we could also argue, and I'm gonna be the guy. We can talk about Elden Ring. And Elden Ring was released as an open world From Software game based in the Dark Souls playology, not universe, but playology, how you play it the same exact way. And No Man's Sky had its bugs. Cyberpunk was considered an absolute failure when it first came out, but we all kind of expected that, right? I did. I don't know if everybody else did, because The Witcher 3 was a total bomb. Until I guess Red Project picked that up and fixed it and made it the game that it is today. Now Cyberpunk's starting to get some feet underneath it, and it's starting to. I've heard nothing but good things about the new Cyberpunk stuff. But Elden Ring, based on an open world game, open world system, other than like a few small technical things that didn't bother me, but I guess I'm easy. I don't know. Maybe I'm not. Whatever. I'm easy to please. It had no super huge issues. There was no DLC you needed to wait for. The game played completely. You fought all the bosses you wanted to, but the best part about that was also finding out that it felt like, when I first played it, it felt linear. It felt like I had to go to Stormvale. I had to go do this. I'm like, I thought this was open world, but it looks like it's open after you get this thing done. No, there are paths around it. Elden Ring rewards you for exploring. From Software games reward you for exploring, and you get better stuff. And that was like the main pull of Elden Ring, was explore the world. Go check it out. You get some cool stuff out there if you just don't rush it. I'm not a patient man, as most people know. So I'm just like, we got to get to point A to point B. I don't need to know I'm being successful. And then I find out there's a path around Stormvale. You don't even need to go to it. You can do that whenever the heck you want, in all my exploration. So is it now just the future of people are going to release an open world game and then kind of figure out what players want from said open world game? That's why there's so many bugs. Like, is that something that's a thought process where we're like, okay, we're going to release Cyberpunk. We've been talking about it for 300 freaking years. It's ready to go. It's not ready to go, but we're going to release it anyways. Then we're just going to let people tell us what's wrong with it. Then we'll fix the problem when we get it done. And then nobody likes that. Nobody wants 800 freaking patches to fix the game. They want an Elden Ring. They want something that's complete out of the box. As soon as you get it, you can fire it up and you can play your game.
So the problem with...
sorry, I did not intend to say that right for that.
That's okay. The problem with open world games, though, is it is a lot more work and effort and manpower or people power and money to fill an open world, right? Than it is a linear experience, right? So it's bigger. So the way they get around it is a lot of the time they use procedural generation to just kind of throw stuff out there. Elder Scrolls does this a lot. A lot of the zones in Elder Scrolls games, Morrowind and Skyrim, are filled by a procedural generation algorithm, and then they go in by hand to edit things and place things. But it's such a massive world, they can't give attention to every part of it. And a lot of the quests, even in the Elder Scrolls games, they have something called Radiant AI, or the Radiant system. And all it is they have basic AI scripts. They tie to all the NPCs, and they throw a few quest chains in, and it pulls from that to build the quest lines for a lot of the basic quests. Not the main story ones, that's obviously fixed, but a lot of the procedural, like random stuff you come across is Radiant. And because of that, it's buggy. The Elder Scrolls games I love, they're fantastic, but they are some of the buggiest games, especially at launch. And they don't improve much after time, right? Skyrim is buggy today as it is when it launched. The only thing now is that there's a lot more content to it, like DLC. Whereas at least Witcher 3. Witcher 3 is one of my favorite games, and it's a flawless experience now. But you're totally right, Chard. When it first came out, there's a lot of issues with it. People had complaints with the controls and the movement and bugs, but that was all fixed. So open world being buggy, absolutely. But whether it gets fixed or not depends.
Morrowind is a great example of that too. They kind of left a lot of the bug fixing to the mod community.
I was just
And
about to say a lot of
Not. Go ahead.
yeah. I was going to say exactly the same thing you were saying is
Okay.
is so many of these developers are then like, hey, here's your modding system, and they let the community fix it.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll go back and fix those things, and sometimes they don't. Morrowind still has the memory leak
steal
issue
the
it had when
mods.
it released. It still
Yeah.
has a memory leak issue. I mean, it's with 32 gigs, it takes a lot longer for it to cause issues. But
It still breaks.
back
you're
in the
right.
day when I think you needed a gig or two to run the game, something like that, maybe 4, I don't recall. But it would eventually overrun your memory and crash the game out into nothing.
This is the story of my job life. I actually literally had a situation where we ended up solving a database dilemma by throwing it into RAM, throwing the entire database into RAM. And then when that started swapping, they were like, what's going wrong? And we said, we ran out of this massive amount of RAM that you had us buy, and it's now swapping. And so me being the asshole that I am, I said, you know what? Why don't we just pin swap into RAM? Thinking that they would get the joke. And they looked at me and said, is that possible?
Wow.
Sure.
Am I the only one that's bothered by having your community fix your game? Is that just a me thing?
No.
How weird is that? Listen, I get the opportunity to allow people to try their own thing and be their own stuff. And there's a lot of programmers out there that are, or people that design stuff that probably are like, oh, this isn't going to do nothing. I'm not going to do whatever. And then they do stuff, and then it gets into Skyrim, and it's just some guy just messing around. It's the big head version of NBA Jam. It's just some guy that's just making some funny things that turns into this major stuff, and it makes the game better one way or the other. And then they're just like, hey, fucking Bill, keep that shit coming, huh? We're going to not pay you, but fix our game, huh? Can you go ahead and fix our game for us? It'd be great. I know we should have done all this before, we made you guys spend $61 on this damn thing, but you seem to have it under control. Let's go ahead and take care of it. No big deal.
It angers me, but I appreciate it when it happens, right?
Well, I believe I've mentioned this in passing before, but I went to Art Institute for game design. And I had a teacher who had left the industry to become a teacher there. And one of his big issues with the industry was that QA teams were getting smaller and smaller while games were getting bigger and bigger and more complex. And so he bitched about that a lot.
They should.
I work
'cause
in
it is
the
definitely a
industry.
problem.
I work in
this
the
was 10 years
industry,
ago.
and one of the things that aggravates me the most is when I started in the industry, not game industry, I work in the software development industry. When this started years ago, you had dedicated QA teams that understood how to test outside the modules, right? Outside of the pieces. And that has been ripped away. And now, in most cases, they have the devs do their own QA.
Yeah.
Well, I feel about that.
That's the shift toward development now, right? Where it's one man, many hats.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's nice for streamlining stuff, but lacking a separate QA department is just not good for overall quality, right? They miss things because people are in a rush to get stuff pushed out. Anyway, we're way off topic.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I wanted to touch on
That's my
one more
fault.
thing on this because of
That's my
QA testers. There's actually a group of QA testers who voted in a union for their crew
Yeah.
at Activision Blizzard, I think it was.
It was,
Yeah.
yeah.
And like the big news is they got a union. And I agree with that. But then secondarily to that, I was like, this big company has 25 testers?
Right.
Like
A
how
very
do you only
tiny
have
pool.
25 people testing your game?
Right.
Well, you know what it is? It's contractors. When they have a big title coming out and they do want to do a little bit of extra testing, they hire a bunch of contractors and then they fire them or lay them off at the end of a contract period. And that's one of the arguments those who unionize had is you're bringing people on full-time or more hours a week as contractors, and you're not even giving them a full-time job after the fact. You're letting them go. So how can you build a life around that kind of lifestyle, right? You just contract it for 6 months or they let you go. And it's terrible. I'm glad they unionized because of all the industries, games is really harsh on its employees. And you have to have such a passion for gaming to actually want to work in it. You'd be crazy to work in game design these days.
Yep.
That brings me to linear world games.
Yes.
Unionizing brings me right back to
Smooth.
linear games that are driven in a line,
Nice.
in a line that are stuck on lines. Let's talk about open world. Let's talk about linear games. I think most of you know, I'm a big Final Fantasy fan. A lot of the games are fairly linear. We got one kind of halfway open world version of Final Fantasy VI after the World of Ruin. You can kind of make your decision on whether you're going to go take on Kefka or you're going to go and, go find everything that you need to, or you want to. You don't need to, but you want to, and finish the game that way. Or we could talk about the most linear of Final Fantasy games that don't even really allow you to grind much, Final Fantasy 13, which I just totally bomb dropped on you guys on this one because there was no mention of this in any of our discussions that we talked about this, but it came up in my brain at some point in my life. How linear is 13 for those who have played it?
It's pretty linear. Like there's a reason people call it Final Hallway, right? But
it is a hallway simulator. It is a hallway
simulator.
It is. But I always defend that aspect of it with Final Fantasy X because 10 is also pretty damn linear. It has a little bit more branching than 13 did in the 24 hours I played of 13. But oddly, I've also been told
24 hours to beat it. Damn.
No. I did not beat it. I gave up during the alarm prison break sequence because I just couldn't anymore. But and I've been considering going back, but I don't know if I want to do that to myself. But
I'll leave that to your own decision, sir.
Yeah, Final Fantasy X was pretty linear, and I'm told that 13 opens up and lets you go just about everywhere after you're about 30 to 40 hours in, which
does.
I mean,
I think you have to leave the planet. You actually have to leave the main area that you start in to then go and grind, because Final Fantasy is based on. Everybody knows you grind Final Fantasy. You fucking grind RPGs.
Yeah.
That's how you fucking play those, right?
That's the genre.
So, and even in 10, whilst it is linear, the sections are opened up enough that you can go and explore the small area that you're in. I totally agree with you on it being linear. It very is much driven. You go here, you go here, you go here. You don't get an airship like you do in all the previous ones where you can fly around. I mean, even 8 had the Ragnarok, which was towards the end, but you could still fly around in it and go back to other spots. But 10 had basically the bonfire aspect of Dark Souls, where you could save at a save sphere and then you would pop in, but you could still go and check stuff out while you were rolling around. 13, you're right. It takes about 40 hours to get to an area, not even going back, but to an area that allows you to, quote, explore it without having to be driven. Because you don't, I mean, it's a big platform that you walk around and you do the LC missions or the LC mission or whatever they're called. And you could do all those. And that's like the side quest in that game where you do those missions and you rescue people that are stuck in crystals or whatnot. But it's still a hallway simulator. It's still literally like you can't go, hey, I'm going to go hit this island because I know that there's really good XP over here and I'm going to grind it out for a couple hours and get all these things leveled up. It's not that way. It is literally like, I'm just going to press all these different buttons that allow these different paradigm shifts to happen. And I'm going to find the best way to beat this creature, and then move on to the next thing until you get to a story-driven boss fight that then leads you to the next area. But I mean, they pretty much aptly went away from that and went back to sort of an open world based game in 15, because 14's are MMO. You can't talk about
That doesn't
14.
count.
So, but it's still linear based. But let's talk about the Batman games.
Well, hold on. I was asking at 15. I want to know about 15 because 15 does open up, it has open world, but there's nothing to do in it really except for the hunting and cooking, and that's all there is to it.
Well, you could ride the chocobos around, and you can. There's some. It's dumb, I know, but there's other things you can pick up and do it. It's a lot more open world than 13 ever was, and I believe 13.2 or 13.3 allowed for more. It's one of those two. It's not both. It's one of those two that allowed for an open world type gameplay.
Right.
I never played either of them because I couldn't get past 13. I beat 13, and that was it for me. I was done with that.
Oh, you didn't play 15?
So, I don't know. I have played 15. I've beaten.
No, he's talking about 13.2 and Lightning Returns 13.3.
Right.
No, I played 15. 15's actually not.
Can we do
15,
an
15 is
episode?
good on its own right.
Can we do an episode at some point on how the hell do you handle all of the Final Fantasy numbers and names? Because
Sure.
With creativity, imagination.
It's like being an Imagineer at fucking Disneyland.
Because I know that there's like X, and then there's now like X2, and there's like 13.7, and I don't know. Like, yeah.
13.2. There's no 13.7.
Okay.
No.
Well,
Goes up
It's cute. You
Well,
think
now with
that
that attitude, there won't be.
you called out my exaggeration, sir. You called out my exaggeration.
I did. I like to peel the curtain back every now and then. I like that fourth
Well,
wall to just show brightly.
You brought up the Batman games, and the reason that I kind of wanted Batman to be on my list to discuss is Arkham Asylum is, I don't think it's in my top 5 games. I'm still trying to figure out my top 5 games. But I would say it's in my top 10 games. It is one of the coolest experiences. I felt like Batman when I was playing it. Like, it just, of course, it had the Joker with Mark Hamill, I mean, just pure glory. But that game is very, very linear. Now, I read a review or a comment where they're like, it is open world. And I'm over here saying, except it's not, because you can't progress the story until you complete the mission, right? I mean, yeah, you can go to everywhere that you've been, but if you want to go to the new area, you need the bat claw now, or you need the explosive gel, or you need the this, and they're all missions that you have to do, and they're really in order, right? And I absolutely adored it, and I adored it enough that when Arkham City was announced, I pre-ordered Arkham City, and that was the moment that I learned that I was done doing pre-orders, because I got Arkham City. And they took away, I mean, it's funny because they claim that it's supposed to make you feel like Batman more, because you have all the tools available to you. You just can build up their power or their effectiveness or whatever, but you can really go anywhere. And and to me, it was like, you took away the epic storyline. Yeah, there's some story because you have to go defeat, Mr. Freeze, and you have to go defeat, so-and-so. But at the same time, it lost the je ne sais quoi, I guess, right? That feeling that just maybe I expected a movie. I expected another interactive movie. And that kind of talks, I wanted to talk about, because I've always tried to figure out most open world games I play and then I get over. Witcher is a rare example. I still haven't beaten Witcher, but oh man, I would tout Witcher all day long. I have played that hours and hours and hours, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. But most open world games, I finally figured it out. Somebody explained it as open world game exhaustion.
Yes,
and this is
I
what
gotta
we were
ask
talking.
then.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so before we move off on Batman, then, so like Batman, I've only played a little bit of Asylum, but I played a fair amount of City, And it's the same controls for the most part, same gameplay. The only difference is really that the city is opened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it's opened and there's so much to do, is it like analysis paralysis that you get exhausted with the game and you stop? Like, what about that takes you away from Asylum? Because Asylum has a good story, City has a good story, but if you stray from the path of City's story, you get lost, I guess.
I think part of the reason that I suffer the exhaustion, in particular with like Batman Arkham City, is I get stuck in I'm a completionist, and that's probably my problem, right? Is I'm like, okay, now I have to go complete all the side quests. And like 30% of the side quests are the same damn thing with just, you know, a little bit of paint change and a few different characters, but it's still a fetch quest. It's still it's still busy work, right?
Right.
And so I think maybe that's my problem. And even though Witcher 3 has some fetch quests, it never feels like it's just slapping new paint and some characters on a different, you know, version of the same quest. There's a little bit of it. I'm not going to say it's, you know, completely free of it, but most of the open world games that I run into it's busy work. It's fetch quests. It's, you know, a new character says, hey, you know, I need you to go, you know, rescue this village, and it's just another village, and you do the same thing, right?
But again, there's a reason for that, though, and that's, again, we said before, is that wide open world, you need to fill it with stuff to do, and sometimes you don't have the time to fill it with quality stuff. That's why Witcher 3 side quests, there are some that are not great, but by and large, the side quests in Witcher 3 stand out so well with their fantastic writing and narrative, and they're each like contained, but they're really good stories told there.
That reminds me all the time. It reminds me of Fallout 4, and another settlement needs your help. Another settlement needs your help, and then they had this meme where it was The Shining, and he was cutting the wall down. You know, the "Here's Johnny" scene, but instead it's her screaming in the bathroom, and then the wall opens up, and it's that one dude that says, "Another settlement needs your help," and I'm dying because it's literally this. I felt like that every time I walked around in Fallout 4, and this guy's telling me, like, "Listen, I'm busy, man. Tell the settlement to figure out their own garbage, okay? I got stuff to do. Leave me alone."
I got my child to save. Why are you throwing me these side quests? I got my child to save. I felt guilty playing that game and doing the side quests.
Right. When I mentioned another cities to save, I literally was thinking the Fallout 4, you know, bullshit, right?
Yeah,
so
it's exactly how that works. But then,
so
I think you and I. Oh, go ahead. Yes,
I was going to say. I mean, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say I don't think I beat very many open world games, even though I love them. I don't beat a lot of them because I do get, I wouldn't say analysis paralysis, but I kind of get burned out on doing all the side stuff and then don't finish the game. Or in some cases, I just treat the game like a sandbox instead of like a story. Skyrim is a great example of that, going back a little bit. I went right off the bat. I went to whatever the shady thief town is. I don't remember what it was called.
I know it, yes.
I went there and did the Thieves Guild quests and all that. And we're talking right off the bat. I was level 3 or 4 when I got there. And by the time I left, I was level 25.
Yeah, okay.
But it was all lock-picking, pickpocketing, stealth. So I was not ready for combat anymore. I engaged hard mode.
You're a pro thief, man. You're ready to steal and break into everything.
Go ahead, Sinister.
So you brought up Skyrim. So this is funny. And Sinsters can probably confirm this. I had Oblivion, and I got so into side quest hell, I have never beaten Oblivion. But I am the Mage Guild Master. I am the Thieves Guild Master. I have like gone through all of that shit. So when I bought Skyrim, I said to Sinsters, I'm like, I'm going to go do the main quest before I do any side quest, because I've got to complete one of these Elder Scroll games. I've played them since Arena, right? And so I went and did the main quest line, and I was like, well, there's 8 hours. Great.
Yep, same. Like for me, I did several hundred hours of Skyrim, and I didn't finish the main quest. Like I got right up to the final boss encounter, died, and I said, I'll come back later. And I never did. And I have like 300 hours in Skyrim and never beat it.
I'm sitting
Wow.
here trying to think of any open world game that I finished. I think Grand Theft Auto, Vice City 3, and San Andreas are the only, and 5 and 6, I think. No, there is no 6. 5. There's no 6. It feels like there's a 6. There's so many goddamn Grand Theft Autos. I've finished all of those, but not without just being lost. I haven't finished Red Dead Redemption 2. I haven't finished Skyrim. I haven't finished Witcher. Because you guys get fatigue. I get overwhelmed. I'm just like walking through town, bebopping through. Hey, I should probably get some potions because I had a nasty fight coming up there. Oh, 800 people have shit for me to do. You know what? I'm not playing this game anymore. I'm going to go play Mega Man, which is arguably also an open world game.
You did complete Elden Ring.
That's true. How many hours was that for you?
147 or something like that, I think.
Jeez.
That's the problem right there. Open world is hundreds of hours. Witcher 3 was like 95 for me, and I feel like I missed so much by rushing at 90 hours.
Right. Just trying to get it done.
Yeah. And I love the game, but there's just no time to do everything.
This kind of brings up a topic because, in my research, I was reading what other people thought, watching YouTube videos, etc. And the kind of the consensus, and I want to know how you guys feel, and I kind of don't know how I feel, so I want to talk it through. But the consensus is open world seems to be what happens when a developer takes an intellectual property and says, people are asking for more. Because, you go for a linear game and you're talking 8 to 20 hours, right? And then people are like, where's my bang for my buck? But $60 for 8 to 12 hours or 20 hours, right? Yeah, if you think of it from going to see a movie, like a cheap ticket is $8.50 these days, and you get 2 hours, right? So,
right.
Anyway, so there's kind of a consensus online of it's bang for the buck. Metal Gear Solid 5, right? Where they took Metal Gear Solid, which was a mostly linear game, and everybody loved it. And they're like, well, we need more bang for the buck. And all of a sudden it's now an open world game.
We're talking about
I got tired of Metal Gear 5 because it was just too much to do and I didn't know what to do. Right? I missed the story. I wanted another Metal Gear Solid. I didn't really want the open world aspect at all for that game. So 100% right.
I wanted another Batman Arkham Asylum interactive movie.
I think it's gonna be a long time before I get another Elden Ring. Because that was I would have paid $90 for that game. That game was spectacular from start to finish. And I could play it again. I've beaten it, and now I can go back. And I think that's the thing about it is that we did a. You guys were with me for most of the ride. We did a big chunk of stuff. We probably fought every boss that was in there, at least every cave, whatever. But what gives me the ability is not that I missed anything. It's that now I have another way of doing it. I can try something different. I can try things that we didn't get a chance to play with because we were so focused on doing it one way. Now I can come back and try it a different way, or a way that I'm used to doing. You know me, the meathead guy that likes to play with the strength builds. I went with a caster build this time. Never played as a caster in any of the Souls games. Now I want to try a faith strength build. I was willing to fire that thing right back up and play another 140 something hours of that thing on stream, but I didn't want everybody to go through that freaking ride with me again. I know that people want something different, so we changed it up. But
Elden Ring
it's not that. I'd play the hell out of Elden Ring randomizer. But that's the thing is that it's my choice. It's my choice to do what I want to do, as opposed to the game forcing choices upon me. And I think that's why I finished Elden Ring, because no one told me, "Hey, you need to go and do this stuff." I'm pretty resilient. If someone tells me to do something, I don't want to do it. I ain't gonna freaking do it. And then I'm going to get mad because that's there to do and I didn't do it. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do anything at all. So I just shut down completely. And that's just my own personal problem. But Elden Ring was just like, here's a world. Here's your goal. Go get it. And I felt like a dog chasing a bone. I was like, sure, okay, whatever. Let's go do it. whatever we had to do to get it done. And then you get these cool surprises. You get dragons coming out of the sky out of nowhere. You get, skeleton dudes in boats that just float by you and then start beating the crap out of you. There's so many like surprises. It always felt like something new was coming at me. Now, I'm not going to say it was perfect. There's a lot of repaint. There's a lot of respriting in the game. I get that. And that's fine. But with a game of that size, it's to be expected. So it didn't bother me as much as, oh man, I already fought this boss like 4 hours ago. It's the same damn boss. No, it's a side boss. It's fine. I'm cool with it. But I get what you're saying with the repaint, Sinistar, about like the Batman games where it's like, hey, I fought a bunch of these guys that were green. Now they're red. They're harder. Let's go.
Right.
Let's a little more creativity. Put antlers on their heads or something. Give them something a little different for me to play with.
Right.
Yeah, but then I wanted to ask you. Oh, fuck. Go.
I was gonna say, I think it's safe to say, like, I could probably list all the games, all the open world games I've beaten, at least like the ones that are open world, like Arkham City and Spiderman, in less than 10,
Yeah.
Right.
I've played dozens. I've beaten less than 10.
So
I've also not beaten Elder Scrolls. Go ahead.
I was going to say the question I have for all of you, especially you, Werewolf, since you just kind of brought this topic up, is if a open world game has multiple endings, and you look at it from a perspective of, oh my God, this is a 100-hour game or whatever, are you going to go back and replay it for the additional endings?
Probably not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Not if you.
It's dependent.
It's generally speaking, I won't touch a multiple ending game like that. Like if you can get different endings from any single playthrough, I won't go back and play them, even if they're only like 12 hours sometimes. Like depending on how far back the branching starts. Like if you got 3 or 4 hours before the branching starts, then yeah, I'll make a save point right there and I'll play through that tail end a bunch of times. But if it's more than that, I'm not interested. Give me the ending I got and I'll go check the rest out on YouTube or something.
Yeah.
Yes.
We can reach into like stuff like Chrono Trigger, which is one of the first games that I can remember as my childhood. It's not the first game, but the first game that I can remember as my childhood that had a game of multiple innings, 13 something innings or like that. But the thing about it was that, like Wolf said, their endings start at different points of the game. So you obviously have to do New Game Plus, but you can start the game out and immediately go fight Lavos and immediately get an ending for that. And then you can go and do a couple options, then go and fight Lavos immediately after that. There was always some kind of branch that you can follow into. When we did I did the retro achievements for it, I got 200% on Chrono Trigger. There was a path that we had to follow to make sure that we did it at the right time to get all the right endings. So that's cool. And I agree with Wolf on the idea of that. Well, if I were to do Elden Ring again, I would try and get another ending, but there's more to Elden Ring to play through it than just getting another ending. If the option is literally there's 20 endings to this game, but it's the same exact gameplay throughout the whole thing, fuck that. I'm not doing that.
Yes.
That's no fun.
Yeah,
I'm going to watch the game 20 times over again just for a different ending. Get out of here. I don't want to do that. But if you're going to let me change my character or let me do a different play style while getting to a different ending, let's go, because that then encompasses everything that I want. It's a whole new game, essentially. I mean, it's not, but it is. It's a whole new play style. So that's how I feel about that.
It was like that for me in Cyberpunk. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no. Go ahead real quick. I was just going
to say for Cyberpunk, it's the same idea. I got the bad ending for that game, and I 40, 50 hours, I rushed through Cyberpunk, and I got the bad ending. I kind of want to go back and get the good ending, but when I went to start over again, I felt I was doing the same thing I did the first playthrough. Same items I liked, the same quests, the same armor and gear. I wasn't doing anything different, right? And I know there's different ways to play Cyberpunk, but for me, just even though I was in the familiar world, and Skyrim's like this too, I always do the same thing again. And for that game, what's the point, right? If there's an open world, but you take the same path, what's the point? So right. I didn't bother getting the other endings in that game.
I was actually going to say, what is the probably most free roaming open world game you guys have played?
I have an answer, and it's one that I didn't think about until we started this episode altogether.
Really?
And that is, yes, it is Elite Dangerous.
That's a
Yes,
VR
that
game, yeah.
definitely qualifies.
It is. Well, it has VR, but I played it only a little bit with VR, but they built the map on actual NASA star charts, and so you have that much. You have like the galaxy-ish to explore,
Oh, wow.
right? Like,
Wow.
and
Like looking at my VR set going, that sounds actually kind of cool.
so if you want to just do the exploration, go for it. But other aspects of the game, and I'm sorry, Frontier Design, whatever the company is, but you ruined your game. If you're willing to just do the exploration, you'd have a great time. But if you try to do any other aspect of the game, they updated it into ruin. But also one of the coolest VR experiences I've ever had.
Nice.
So, yeah. But
free
yeah,
roaming.
so the most, free roaming. I mean, as long as you have fuel, and there is a way. Once you get enough credits, and you can earn, credits, you can get a solar scoop to go essentially refuel yourself based on certain types of suns. So you can literally explore into perpetuity. As
Wow.
I mean, something I don't remember. They have 50 or 60,000 solar systems to explore that they grabbed from the NASA maps. So,
but in that kind of game, though, it's all based on procedural generation. How much is there to do on all those stars? Because they didn't hand place much of anything.
No, and that's really where you run into, like, if you want to just go explore and find certain minerals, etc., you'll have a great time. But if you want beyond that, you're limited to a very smaller scope, right? A much smaller scope. Because as you said, it's
erroneous on their part.
Indeed. Actually, I think there's a streamer erroneous. No, he's never played it as far as I've seen.
Erroneous. So I have to ask, Wolf, when you mean free roaming, do you mean the ability to just kind of roll around and do nothing, or like what do you mean by free
go where
roaming?
you
Like,
want, tackle what you want, beat the game if you like right at the outset, or do the content in whatever order you feel like?
That's an excellent question. I could lean on Elden Ring, because I mean, you got to beat a bunch of bosses to get to the end, so there's that mildly linear aspect of story progression. But I think the most fun that I've had playing a free roaming type game was Red Dead Redemption 2. I'd have to say, that's that game I would spin up, and I'd play for hours and do nothing. I'd do absolutely nothing. And I know that there's a story you have to follow. It's just like any other Rockstar game. We got to follow the story to unlock all the stuff, or not unlock, but to move on to the next thing. But I just would ride around and rope people and then drag them. I'd rob trains. I'd hold up stores. I'd get thrown into jail for hundreds of dollars and then be like, God, I've only earned like $1 admission. No wonder everything sucks at $300. I would just, and I go find new guns. I knew all kinds of stuff like that. I think Red Dead 2 was easily the most fun I had doing nothing for hours. Easily, I think.
It's funny because my brother said all those same things, but he hated it. But he's not a big open world gamer. He gets overwhelmed and thinks there's just too much to do and doesn't play them. So
open world exhaustion.
I get overwhelmed real bad with games. Like, I can't play The Witcher. I can't beat it. I can't do it because there's too much to do, and I don't like. I know. It's
so
a
good,
wonderful
though,
game.
Charles.
It's a spectacular game, but I just see all the things, and I feel like I have a chore. I feel like I'm doing chores. I feel like I need to go fold the laundry, and then I need to clean up my office, and then I need to go do the dishes. I don't want to do that, and then I'll fight a dragon. No, I don't want to do that. I want to go fight the dragon and not have people bother me about the crap. But then I get my ass kicked because I didn't do the side missions to get the items I needed to fight said dragon. It's dumb. Let's play King's Quest. There was no problems with King's Quest.
all right, Jake, how about you?
I think I know the game you're talking about, so I'm going to let you say it. But I agree that the game you're going to mention is probably the most open world game where you can literally do whatever you want and just get to the game end whenever you feel like. And I love it for it.
Yeah, it's Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
I've
Just-
never played that. I want to. I just recently got a Switch, and I wanna try that one.
It's one of the
It
best on the
is-
Switch.
Yeah, so the story is there's more story than the NES game, the original NES game, thank goodness. And for the story there is, it's really good. But the story is very sparse. Instead, you're
Yeah.
given lots of little tidbits for world building and people's experiences in this world and little rumors and tales and local stories about what's happened over the last 100 years. So you get to go and experience it from a more local kind of storytelling, because these people will be like, this is what's going on around here, this is what's happened in recent years, stuff like that. So every time you wander somewhere, there's different villages and they have different stuff going on, and a lot of times they don't have a whole lot of interconnection, but it's just it's wild. Like Jake mentioned that before the stream or before the recording here, that his wife had gone and found all the shrines.
Yeah.
I did that too. It was very time consuming, but
Tell me
that was
about
my
it.
goal. I tried looking for Korok seeds and I sucked at it. Now
Yeah.
I played this game when it first came out. I've not played it much since all the DLCs came out. I know there's all sorts of stuff that helps you find Korok seeds and all this kind of stuff and tons of stuff added. But I played vanilla, and finding Korok seeds was not going to happen. Screw that. But the shrines I made work, and I think there was only one that I really got stuck trying to find, and that's because it was in a mountain. And the only place you could find it with your little compass sonar thing was nowhere near the entrance to the mountain. And it was aggravating as hell. But I do love that you can go do any of the major animal shrines or whatever they're called, animal dungeons, in any order you want. You don't have to do any of them or
Yeah.
all of them, whatever. And then like you can literally, as soon as you're done on the training area, jump off the plateau and go straight for Hyrule Castle and kill Ganon.
That's why the speedruns of this game are so good, because once you get the first couple of runes to unlock the abilities, you just go straight to the castle. And so seeing people from the starting area get the runes as fast as possible, find the nearest tree, and then they just find a trick to ride that to the castle to get there faster is so amazing to me. But you don't need to do that. You're not really breaking anything. You can walk to the final castle if you really want to and beat the game. And I have done that before. It's very hard. But the fact that that's the game. You want to do dungeons? Do dungeons. The boss will be easier. You don't? Just go to Ganon. And I love it for that. Although I disagree in the story parts. As much as I love Breath of the Wild, there's not a lot of story. And you're right, it's mostly lore in the areas around you and the world building. But I miss that there's like not much of a cohesive story, right? All you get is Zelda telling you that you're a bad person half the time. She's always insulting you and knocking you down a peg. That's all you get in Breath of the Wild story-wise.
No,
like an
you get
open
those
world marriage.
flashbacks. You get the flashbacks with the heroes when you go toward doing the major dungeons.
A little bit,
and
yeah.
completing
But there's not a whole lot of plot to the game, right? I'm hoping the sequel to this game, they've built the open world, that they're going to reuse a lot of it. I'm hoping now that the second game will have more of a story to it. Although Zelda historically does not have much of a story to begin with, right? It's always been a story light type of game. It's always been a game about gameplay, and this has that.
Right.
And
Yeah,
and leaning on Zelda, leaning on that aspect of Zelda. We know it's open world. Like Zelda Link to the Past is fairly open world for the most part. We talked about sequence breaking. We get that whole idea. You have to do things in a certain order to unlock certain things, but you can still go fairly anywhere. What makes an open world game not a Metroidvanian or roguelike? Like what is that thought process where you to a roguelike essentially, or a Metroidvanian, you have to get a certain item to get to a certain area, right?
Well, you
Is that
brought
not
up
open world anymore?
You brought up Link to the Past, and there are items you have to get to progress to certain areas, right? I mean, you can't lift the large boulders until you get whatever. Yeah. And so there are portions of it that are locked away. So there is at least some level of linearity to it, right?
Fair. I'm curious because you can explore. You can explore the whole, not the whole thing. Obviously, things you're limited to, but you can walk around the whole goddamn thing all you want. But you still need the items to get in. Does that take away from the open world? Even though you can literally walk around the majority of the map, maybe not the whole thing, but at least the majority of it. You can't go to temples and stuff, which is what drives the story into going forward. But it's still, I mean, it's still fairly open. It's not like Mega Man where you go to a boss, you fight a boss, you're in that stage, you get past the stage, fight the boss, then you go to the next one. That's all linear, you know, you're in the stage. It's not like you can do anything different. It's the same thing.
So Mega Man's not open world, you're saying? You don't think so? Pick your direction?
Well,
I said it was arguably an open world. I didn't agree to that argument. I just said it was arguably an open world.
The majority of Zelda games
go ahead.
are the majority of Zelda games are very go here, do this. It's much like a guided tour around whatever kingdom the game takes place in for that particular game. Usually Hyrule, not always. That's why it's kingdom. But it's very rare that they are just here. Like even Wind Waker, it felt open world, but you were stuck with fighting currents and winds and all that you can't pass through certain areas until later in the game. So as open as it feels, it's very go here, do this.
So Wind Waker is the most linear open world feeling game ever.
I was going to say, is there a middle ground here where we need to define linear and open world, and there's a middle ground which is a open world or a linear faking to be an open world?
Wind Waker is probably our middle ground then, honestly.
Well, or
give you a boat in an entire ocean and they still make you fucking go in a certain direction to get to where you need to get to, but you got the whole ocean to explore.
Or Mega Man, right? Like it fakes like it's an open world because you get some choice, but do you really?
I mean, choice is really the decision on whether it's open world or linear, right? Because if you have the decision to do something different, does that automatically make it an open world? I mean, again, this is all very facetious, very not facetious, but this is very like big brain, whatever, you know. I'm looking up at the clouds trying to look at the molecules, kind of stupid stuff. It's a linear game, but when you look at it, you could argue any game is open world or any game is really linear.
It might be a level of erroneous thinking.
Very erroneous.
Right, but it's also sometimes there's games with the illusion of choice, right? Like, you look at the BioWare RPGs, like they have design docs, and they've talked about this before openly. Their design philosophy for things like KOTOR and Mass Effect and a bunch of their RPGs in that period, where it's straight line linear path for your quest, and then they branch out and they give you 3 or 4 locations you can visit. You have to visit all 3 or 4 of them, but the order is up to you. So is that really a choice when you have to do it anyway, when your only choice is the order? It's not much of a choice. Right. And there's some games like Grand Theft Auto 3. Yes, it's an open map, it's open world, but the quests you have to do, you have 3 bosses and mob bosses that give you quests. You have to do all of them to finish the game. So is it really a choice when you're forced to do it anyway, I guess?
So we're saying that the most open world game ever is Breath of the Wild, because you have the decision to either do a bunch of shit or go beat it. And the worst open world game we've ever heard of is King's Quest.
Sure, yeah.
Done.
Or Mass Effect.
Or Mass Effect.
It's funny because I was thinking about some things and I was struggling to come up with an open world game, like a really good open world game that is a 2D platformer. And like there are open world games that are 2D platformers. You've got Faxanadu, you got Castlevania 2. Rygar goes back and forth between overhead and platforming.
Our favorite.
But taking it all the way back. But I am playing Rogue Legacy 2 right now on my own. And this game actually, like, it's pretty damn open world. It's possible to go a lot of places you should not be able to go. And it depends on map generation for that particular character that you're playing as that time, because it's always completely procedurally generated. Every time you enter the dungeons, they're different again. But sometimes you get multiple entryways to other regions, and you can get into an area that otherwise you shouldn't be able to get into because you need a power up to go through the normal way. And I've done this and immediately gotten, stomped because I'm not strong enough for it. But if you're patient and skillful, you can probably do a lot of stuff in this game without all the major upgrades necessary, which is just wild to me.
Maybe that's the
Can level
definition of what
capping
we-
be considered something linear? Like you have to go, like you can go into the area, but you're going to get annihilated. Like, does that count as a? As
Well,
a,
I was-
I mean,
somewhat
they're
linear?
not stopping you from going there. It just monsters are killing you when you do. So
Well, I was just going to
very
bring up
Elden Ring.
maybe our definition needs to involve sequence and sequence breaking, right? Some games may allow sequence breaking when that sequence breaking is ability or level, right? Like you can sequence break all you want, but you're going to get your face stomped.
Say my mortality is keeping me from the next.
Yeah.
Yeah, my sanity.
I
keeps
go
me
there.
fine.
I could stand in front of the freeway all I want, but I'm pretty sure I'll die. So, if I'm standing there too long, I can go there, but I wouldn't recommend it.
But it sounds like Breath of the Wild, which I have played, and I got open world exhaustion because I was like, I'm going to go chase all the shrines, all of them, and then I was like, okay, I'm exhausted. I need to go back and play that game. But I mean, it sounds like that game is actually fairly beatable by sequence breaking.
Not even
Well,
sequence breaking.
Jake-
You just have the freedom to go there whenever you want, right? Sorry, Wolf, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Well,
it doesn't even
Jake,
have a sequence other than training, right?
You said you've beaten this, right? Like without doing all the extra stuff, just going straight
Yeah.
for the end?
My second time going through the game, you just do the tutorial areas. It's like 4 shrines to get all the abilities. And then, I just found the best armor and weapon I could, and I made a beeline for the castle. And in the castle, there's actually a few great weapons. And as long as you know the pattern to the boss, it's totally doable. It's harder because you have less hearts and whatnot. But there's no cheating. There's no tricks or sequence breaking. That's just the game. The only reason you go to the dungeons is because you want to make that final boss harder. And if you want story bits, that's really all it is. But
It's funny because there's like a lot of different achievements for doing like 3 heart runs in a lot of the previous Zelda games, like
sure.
Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, and all that other stuff. But that's your choice. You have to you have to beat the bosses because you have to get the Triforce pieces or whatever to
Right.
unlock it. But you can also make it difficult on yourself by not grabbing the items that would make it easier. Not stuff that you need to progress, but stuff that you can quality of life things, basically.
right.
Yeah.
It's hard to define, I think, was what we've kind of come to, right?
Right.
Well,
Yeah,
it's just
I
that there's
think
different
open
styles of
world is
games, right?
definitely-
And variations of open world, right? An open world where you are not forced to do anything, or you can do everything, or whether there's barriers or not to limit your focus to do story quests, or whether it's just wide open to do things at your own pace. Like there's different variations of it, and it works for different genres, right? Like we didn't talk about before the podcast, but Assassin's Creed, the newer Assassin's Creed game, they follow the Ubisoft's very distinct style for their open world games, where there's a story, but then there's a massive amount, a hurricane of icons on that map of stuff you could be doing or exploring. And it's, again, I also get exhausted from it. But it's one of those, it's one of the, you know what it is? I was going to say this before with Zelda. Sinistar, Breath of the Wild today, you could pick it up right now. And knowing that you can go to the final castle right now, you could easily do it. You could do it, pick it up, and play and know what to do. Games like Assassin's Creed or games like Elden Ring, my problem with Elden Ring, I put 100 hours into it. I didn't finish it. I'm, a month have not even touched it. When I pick Elden Ring up now, I won't know where to go, what to do, and I'll probably be rusty as heck on how to play. So that's the kind of open world where once you step away, it's hard to get back into that world and finish it because of everything you've lost. Breath of the Wild is great in that you don't need any of that. You have one goal and you know where to go and you can totally do it, even if you're like rusty. So that's a big difference.
I would love to go back and play, and I actually keep meaning to going back and playing Witcher 3. But I know that if I'm going to do it, I'm going to start over.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, dear God, I'm going to go to that save game and be like,
And you know
New
what?
game.
You're gonna start it over, and
Yeah,
I
I
bet
don't know
you
what
pick the
any of
same
this is.
skills and build you did the
When
first
I-
time around.
Absolutely.
When I agreed to
Absolutely.
do the Bloodborne playthrough that I've been doing for you guys for the Sisyphean homework, I spun up my original save. I have no idea where the hell I am, and I think my character, after 3 days, I'm finally at where I was
Mhm.
3 freaking years ago when I first started playing this stupid game.
Which
So
I
I
would argue-
totally can relate.
is your FromSoft practice. In 3 days, you've gotten back to where you were.
I got to give myself a little pat on the back for that one. My first wall we crushed down today without any issue. So, but now I don't know what I'm doing because I never made it beyond this part. So I'm like,
Nice.
start reading some stuff because I don't know where the hell I'm going. But that's, again, it goes back to the linear thing, is that, you know, that game is guiding me in a certain direction,
Yeah.
and it's so vague. It's supposed to kind of feel open world ish, although we know that a lot of the Dark Souls and Soulsborne games, other than Elden Ring, are very linear, but they still feel open world. Like I have the decision to go wherever I want to, but there are blocks in its place. You got to beat bosses, you got to unlock things, you got to do shit.
Right.
But they don't tell you well enough that, like to Jake's saying, that he can go and play Breath of the Wild and go exactly where he needs to go and get it done. After so many months of me not playing Bloodborne, being well familiar with it, I still don't know what the hell I'm supposed to do. And so we're starting over, and hopefully everything makes sense. And now it's starting to go, oh yeah, that's right. That's how I got here. Now I know where I'm supposed to go. So it's one of those, like, the lights turning on in the old brain box there.
Yeah. Well, on Breath of the Wild, you know, this is a topic I think we've bounced around a little bit, you know, through all of our communications, but I would argue that Breath of the Wild, being able to jump in and kind of, you know, get going and just roll with it, comes back to rational game design, and that is something that Nintendo games do incredibly well. Is rational
Truth.
game design.
Truth.
It sounds like a topic for another episode, though.
I was
It
gonna
does.
say
It does.
even Breath of the Wild by itself could be its own episode. It's a very intriguing game. All the different aspects about it. Again, maybe not a lot of story, but, and I have never played it myself, but we've talked about it, like having to have the right clothes to be in the right spot and the right gear to do certain things. That blows my mind. I mean, that's cool stuff. I really dig that. So I'm gonna have to buy it, and then we'll all have to revisit it at some point.
Oh, I ain't playing that one again. Do you know how many hundreds of
I gotta-
hours my wife and I played in that game to get all 120 shrines, then to go
Then
and do
it
the
sounds to
DLC
me
and the hard
like you
modes?
are already prepared for the next episode that we're talking about this stuff in.
I'm
I'm going to add more homework to my homework.
So I think I was at about 165 hours if you subtract the 15 to 20 hours my kid played just screwing around on my file while I was working through the game, because he would want to play and I'd just let him run around freely, and then I'd roll back to a save that I knew was good and play from there again. So yeah, I had about 165 hours in that game from, you know, start to finish, finding all the shrines and everything. I didn't even get to touch the DLC. I want to go back and play the DLCs for this.
The
I'm
one
very
DLC
interested to see
is
what they
very
were.
story focused, and it's worth playing just for the story bits. You get a little bit of backstory in each of the heroes that you was missing from the vanilla game, so it's definitely worth doing the DLC.
I didn't even know it had DLC. Of course it does. Every game has
Everything
fucking
does.
DLC. Oh my God, my chair has DLC.
Elden
Got
Ring is
fans
going
of
to have DLC any day now. I guarantee you that they'll announce something.
They're talking about it. I'm first in line. No, I won't be. I'll
And
be
start
like
over from
20th
scratch.
in line, but I'll still be there. I'll do it. I'll do it.
Cars got DLC these days, man.
Yeah.
especially Teslas.
Well,
Yeah.
there's open. Speaking of cars, the car games nowadays, like Forza Horizon, that's like an
Yeah.
open world car game. Like that's
Yep.
a genre historically has nothing to do with open world concepts, and they made it a racing game that's open world. You can kind of drive around the map and go wherever you want and pick up races ad hoc throughout the map. That's wild to me.
Have you guys ever played Burnout before? You guys,
Oh,
most of
yes.
you guys may not
Burnout
be
Paradise.
big car racing. Burnout Paradise, exactly.
Oh,
I've not
That
played
was like my
Paradise.
first car racing open world game. That was awesome. That was a cool
and
game.
felt fast. That's one of the coolest
Yes.
things that I love is like so many racing games. You're like, okay, we're moving. But that
Yeah,
one,
that
you're like,
felt breakneck.
yeah,
Yeah, a lot of racing games that are open world don't feel terribly fast. The Crew was really
Mhm.
bad about that.
mm,
Big, MMO open world game for racing,
right.
and it felt kind of slow. There was
If
a
you've
problem.
played Burnout Paradise, you know that when you get up to speed, you're like, oh dear God, when am I going to just absolutely plaster myself into
I'm gonna
something?
wreck. I'm gonna wreck so bad, and you
gonna
do.
wreck 'em.
And that's the best part was the the emphasis on the crashes and the destruction that you cause.
All the
I
slow
love
motion and
Burnout.
crumpling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You like when you
Open
messed
world.
up, you knew it.
That was
Yep.
Crap.
But great open world reference. Burnout Paradise, absolutely open world.
And Forza.
Man,
let's
these
give
things are
Jake
just all over
his
the
time
place,
in the
huh?
sun.
Yeah.
You may not be Kid Icarus, but I'll make sure that your wings melt a little bit, sir.
Hey, I
Hold
beat
on.
Kid
I
Icarus.
do want to mention before we wrap up. I do want to mention one thing because I see my wife mentioned something in chat. After a long day of making decisions, I think I would prefer a linear game because the last thing I want to do is make more decisions when trying to relax.
Yeah.
That's not wrong.
Absolutely.
I'm with you.
Absolutely.
That's probably
I
why I
will
don't play
almost-
The Witcher. 'Cause I'm tired of making decisions for everybody.
I will
Jesus.
almost never spin up an open world game on a work night. Almost never.
The only game where I would do that
agree.
is No Man's Sky, because in No Man's Sky, I can choose to do nothing if that's what I want to do. I can just sit and build my base tower if I want to do that. I can go mine resources and I don't feel bad afterwards. I have fun either way, but I don't have to worry about decisions and quests and things to do if I don't want to.
I just
Yep.
sit in space and look at the planets.
Hey, they're
Put my
pretty.
VR set on and just sit there.
Yep. But that
All right,
said,
and-
I started playing through Arkham Asylum again as part of homework for this episode, and I have absolutely adored every minute of it. Even though I've played through that game, this is like my 4th playthrough. So,
I didn't do any homework for this episode.
and not one that I cringe to spin up on a work night. I will happily spin that one up on a work night.
Decision
Right on.
fatigue. I like it.
Mhm.
All right. Anybody else got anything they want to say before we close this off?
No, I feel like we tapped into a lot of really good questions and a lot of really good answers, and I think we still sit at the idea that open world is kind of eye of the beholder. It's kind of your
Yeah.
decision to make whatever you want it to be.
It's funny
Yeah.
because I was looking at open world lists before this,
Mhm.
and some of these games I was like, I wouldn't consider that open world, but okay. Like,
Right.
okay. And one of the good examples is I came across Blaster Master as open world. And I talked about this game way too fucking much, but
Or
I
not
don't
too
think
much
it's open
enough.
world. I love it. I don't think it's open world. It's great that it's like exploration and they let you wander wherever you like, but it's closed off. Every single area is closed until you beat the boss of that area, and then you can go to the next one. It's, to me, it's still walls. It's
Yeah.
still, and I don't think you
I
can
think-
sequence break it easily. I think you
No,
have
that
to.
I think their
would-
argument.
break it.
I think the argument is any type of exploration that is thrown in that's not you riding a rail to go somewhere is considered open world because you have a decision. You don't have a decision because you have to go do something, but you have the decision to either go straight to it or mess around in the area and find other things. I think
All right.
that's where they're trying to aim it at, is that it's your choice to either go and proceed to the next area or stay in this area, stay a while and listen a little Tristan for you.
My homework for Sisyphean
Chard.
then is an open world game. Super Mario Brothers 1 is an open world game because you can warp.
That doesn't count. But so
I
speaking
hate
of
you.
Mario, real quick,
I mean,
then.
Yeah.
All right.
it's about as logical as your spot platformer.
Look, man, do we need to go through this episode again? It's a platforming game. There's a flat surface which pieces jump on. It totally qualifies.
I
Anyway,
want to
and
get in on that discussion. We'll
we
revisit
have to do that
later.
again for sure. But I was just going to point out Mario 64 and Mario Odyssey, right? If we're saying Blaster Master is open world, even though it's like closed off worlds, but you can explore the caves in anywhere you want. The Mario 3D games are kind of like that, where it's like you have like the paintings, you have the worlds in Mario Odyssey, but there's just so much to do in each of those zones. It's kind of like a series of mini open worlds. maybe that's what they're coming
Sure.
at with Blaster Master. But I'm kind of with you. It still seems a fairly linear game in Blaster Master, as good as it
Yeah,
is, and there's some backtracking, but it's not really open world.
You still got to beat the bosses in order. Like
Right.
it's what it boils down to. You're
Yeah.
not going to go straight to area 8 and win the game.
Yeah.
It's not Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Yes, no Breath of the Wild.
No. I think it's on the vein of any kind of exploration that can be done at any point that doesn't just lead you from point A to point B. They're going to call it open world because you can take your time in that area if you want to. So, and again, I don't agree with that. I'm the same with you guys. I don't totally agree with that depiction of it, but I think that's what they're trying to sell it as. It's like, it's open world. You can drive around all day here if you want to, or you can go do whatever the heck you want instead of, you're going to spin this thing up and you're going to run down this there. It's totally erroneous. Totally erroneous.
I play Metroid like an open world because I revisit the same area over and over and over again because I can't find the damn next part.
But that's a Metroidvanian. That's not open world.
All right, guys, let's discuss where the listeners can find everyone. All right, Chard.
Everywhere. You find me on Twitch, www.twitch.tv/chardmonk. YouTube, here at Press B to Cancel, and on my own channel under the same name. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that crap, all under the same name. I'm pretty easy to find.
All right, Sinistar.
I actually streamed last night on Twitch. Sinistar77 on Twitch. I may or may not be back to screaming. I may or may not be back to screaming. We'll find out.
Well, that game you're playing will
Exactly.
definitely.
I'm sure you'll be screaming later. Don't worry.
That's right. That or Twitter or here.
All right, and Sick Jake.
Yeah, I'm Sick Jake. You can find me mostly on Twitter, but occasionally on Twitch. Actually, I started doing a Let's Play of Shantae for the Game Boy Color, which is it's really amazing game considering it's the Game Boy. So the first part of that will be up this weekend, and it'll be on YouTube. So just search for Sick Jake, no K and Sick.
Right on. And I am Werewolf. You can find me on Twitch and Twitter, mostly WAREWULFF. Search it on Google. Tell it you minute. You'll find me. And this has been another episode of Press B to Cancel. Invisible walls. Wow, that was terrible. My voice did not like it this time. What the hell? Invisible walls.
More
There we go.
Elden Ring.